This is Eric Beyer of Old Vine, Texas, a new winery tasting room featuring 100% Texas wines from wineries all over the state. We are located in Mansfield, Texas, inside of Ancora Event Center on Broad Street. We have weekly tastings, charcuterie board to enjoy, live music, and a new wine club. Go visit our website at oldvinetexas.com to sign up for our newsletter and learn more. Or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Old Vine, Texas. We'll see you soon.
Welcome everybody back to We Know Texas Vino. This is a special episode that we got some great people here in the Texas wine industry here, and it's actually an honor and a privilege to sit here with each and every one of y'all, except for John. Everybody knows about John. John is a good guy. That's right. I like John. So real quick, before we get deep into this episode here, if we could start from the very left, so from the great Betty over here, if you can introduce yourself and everybody move around.
Hello, I'm Betty Bingham, and I'm from Bingham Family Vineyards, and we have over 200 acres of vineyard in the High Plains, as well as a full winery there in the High Plains, AVA. And we also have our own wine label, and we have tasting rooms around the state of Texas. And my husband, Cliff, grows the grapes, but he's currently out driving the tractor because he also has 2,000 acres of Texas Department of Agriculture certified organic row crops. So he's babying his cotton crop right now.
Okay.
Wow.
Kelsey?
I'm Kelsey Kramer. I'm representing William Chris Vineyards, and I am their Director of Education. I'm probably the only one in this group who does not grow grapes and make wine myself. I just teach about it. And I educate sometimes on behalf of the Texas wine growers as well. And the education wing of William Chris Vineyards, which is in High Texas, is called the Hill Country Wine Academy. And so that's a project that certifies people in Texas wine education and international wine education through the WSET program based in London.
Awesome. As well as really fun classes, because I took the food and wine pairing class, and it was really
if you know
fun.
You know classes, which Betty knows.
Yes.
All right, I'm next.
Yes, sir.
My name's Blake DeBerry. I'm the co-owner with my wife Karen, Tornalux Vineyard and Winery in Burnett, Texas. I'm the past president of Texas Wine Growers and currently a board member of Texas Wine Growers.
Awesome.
So we have about 3 acres of estate grapes on our property up in the hill country on a granite outcrop. But we also source about 80% of our wine comes from High Plains fruit. But we are, of course, 100% Texas.
Nice.
I'm John Rivenburgh, and apparently nobody likes me. So I'll just go through, what I do. I own Rivenburgh Wine. We're also the first innovators around starting the first state wine incubator. I've been involved with about 45 winery operation startups. Probably why nobody likes me. I'm the
You're
current.
just easy to tease.
I'm the current
Put yourself in the
president.
middle of it.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. It's
Really?
There's a question. There's a list. Why does nobody like Rivenburgh? Well, he's in charge of everything.
30 minutes.
I joke. I'm the president of Texas Wine Growers, and I'm here representing that as well as the cause around Texas wine and promoting it.
Awesome.
I guess that makes me next. I'm Andrew Sides, the founder of Lost Draw Wines. We are located in Johnson City on an estate vineyard and property there where we produce all of our wines. Member of Texas Wine Growers, this organization that we're representing today, and then also former president of Texas Hill Country Wine Growers, or wineries, whatever.
Yeah.
That makes 3 of us, actually. I didn't think about that. I'm a past president.
I'm current president. So
Ooh, what does that mean for you guys? Yeah, what's that mean for
Where y'all at over
This is
there?
a presidential.
Well,
sorry,
no,
Andrew.
presidential
we can't
cabinet.
because we're just
Yes, but
we're an affiliate member.
proponent
We're an
of
affiliate member of the Hill Country
growing
Wineries,
and making
'cause we
Texas
don't
wines.
Make wine
Yeah.
there. We make our wine on the High Plains.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that.
Wait.
I'm
It's
good.
okay
But
because
we are a member of the
Logistical.
Texas Wine Growers,
okay, yeah.
both as a winery and as a vineyard.
You okay, John?
Got it.
Yeah, I'm cold. It's cold in here. Sorry.
Really?
It's cold. Yeah. I spend all my time outside.
We're about to heat you up.
Yeah, I know. Trust me. I saw the list.
Y'all are killing me here. All right. Well, before we get started, I want to give thanks to the Ancora Event Center for allowing us to have this event here today for the Texas wine growers. And also to do this episode. And then, of course, Ovine, Texas. Eric and Emily Byers, they have such a great selection of Texas wines here, and they're ever growing in that list. And I know most of y'all's wines are here. Mm-hmm. So it's awesome that they do that. And also, I give a good shout out to Emily and Eric. Good friends of mine. I support what they're doing 100% because I love what they're doing, and they push and promote Texas wines. And we need more of that here in Texas.
May I say they're also students of mine. So they're Texas Wine Ambassador certified and WSET 1 certified through the Hill Country Wine Academy.
Well, I know somebody else. I'm going to raise a hand. I know somebody else that needs all that too.
Okay, well, that's a great place to get it.
Yeah, I need it done in 24 hours. Okay. And then also real quick, I want to give also, talk about my sponsors real quick. High Camp Flask. Have y'all actually seen that little product I've got? Oh my God, that's probably the most amazing thing out there. You're out there in the vineyard. You don't want to run inside and get a bottle of wine. You can take this little High Camp Flask. Both ends come off and turns to a tumbler. They're magnetic. It holds a whole bottle of wine to the perfect temperature for 24 hours.
Wow.
You should have brought one to pass around for us during this.
Well, no, because I probably won't get it back.
Well,
No, you wouldn't.
you might get it back empty.
Marketing
Sounds like a
expense.
you problem.
But y'all should check it out. It's actually a really great little product. I actually took it out to Possum Kingdom one day, put a bottle of Barbera wine in it, left it in the sun on purpose at 90 degrees. Open it up. It released pressure off of it. It creates its own pressure. It released the pressure off of it, poured it, and it was still 70 degrees in that bottle. Perfect.
Wow.
temperature.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now, after 24 hours, I can't guarantee. So, cool. All right. Are y'all ready for this? Are y'all excited?
Yeah.
Excited, yes,
So we're
ready.
going to dub this episode. I don't really, usually when I go and sit down at a vineyard or a winery, the episode is whatever we're at, okay? But this episode, we're going to call this The Truth About Texas Wine and Beyond the Myths with the Texas Wine Growers. I'm excited about this, okay? Most of y'all have not been to John. He's like the chupacabra. Every time I call him and say, hey, can I come and do an episode? He's like, I'm not even here. I don't even know where I'm at. That is true.
truck.
I love John.
My pickup truck.
I love John. John and I have sat on conversations many times when I was driving back from Oklahoma working and stuff, and just had some great conversations. I respect you fully 100% in what you do and what you represent in the Texas wine industry and how much you push and promote Texas wines. And so I give you a hard time because I love you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just did that on I have to edit that one
Preface.
part out.
Do you want me to switch seats with you? Yeah.
No, that's right. Pull my hand. I don't want to do that. Not today. Not on camera. Well, so real quick. So I was given this little cheat sheet here because I can't remember everything. I have part-timer's disease. And so Kelly put all this together. She's a great woman. She helped put all this together. And she gave me some notes that we need to go through. So first off, this is the goals of the Texas wine growers. Missions: educate, advocate, and protect the integrity of Texas grown wines. Bust common myths about Texas wines, the climate, grape sourcing, sweetness, and quality, etc. Elevate awareness of Texas wine fits on the shelf, in the glass, in the global conversation, and invite listeners to get curious to go and taste 100% Texas wines for themselves. So, John, I'm going to open the floor to you first.
Okay.
So, when we talk about pushing and promoting Texas wines, okay, we live in a society right now where California is in everybody's mouth. But when we start talking about Texas wines, people are like, well, Texas wines are too sweet. Why do people have that myth?
That's a good question. I think that's probably a regional question, right? I think it depends on where you're at as to if that is the question or not. I think for a very long time, Texas made sweet wines. I think the first introduction for a lot of new wine drinkers are around sweet wines. I think that's in general, right? I don't think that that's necessarily across the board. I think that's everywhere. When you're first getting into wine, you gravitate towards sweetness, right? As humans, we're genetically predisposed to chase the sweet things, right? As opposed to the bitter, right? It's a fact. Yeah. It's a weird evolutionary biology, you can't get around it. But I'm a little caught sideways just on that one because it's not, I just generally don't hear or see that. I guess it's the world that I run into. I think what we more deal with is the perception around a 20-year myth around what Texas wine is, right? Maybe not necessarily sweetness, but of lower quality. Right. And I think we've far surpassed that at this point.
yeah.
So I think we're at a point where I'm sure everybody in this conversation is going to want to talk about where we are, right? And breaking that myth and perception around what Texas wine is. Everybody at this table or at this group of seating has been involved with a winery that's won major awards, that's tasted blind with, professionals, and constantly we come out on top. And I think that's kind of why we're here in Mansfield. Right. To discuss and continue to promote and protect the authenticity around what we're doing in Texas wines. And so I think that it's breaking that perception, whether the perception is that all Texas wines are sweet or all Texas wines are subpar. It's just not true anymore. If you would have had this conversation 20 years ago, I could argue that was the case, but I think that's where we're at now.
Yeah. Anybody else want to fill in with that?
Yeah, I think it depends where you're getting your impression from. Are the people who are saying that Texas wine is sweet going out to the vineyards to taste from there, or are they going into their gas station to find Texas wine and they're getting impression from the sweet Texas wine that's in certain stores? Right. Every place that holds Texas wines has a different type of consumer. And so my first question would be, what section of consumers are having that impression? Because the people that come out and visit us in the high plains and in the hill country, I don't think that's the impression. There's so much more dry wine.
Oh yeah. And for the record, there's plenty of thousands of gallons of sweet wine that are made from other wine regions besides Texas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And a lot of people, when I explain that, let's pick on a couple of states like Missouri, Alabama, where the predominant grape that's grown there is Mustangs and Muscadine. That's all they get. I'm not sure what other kind of grapes they grow there, but a lot of people say when they go to a tasting room there in those states, it's sweet wine that they all drink there. In fact, actually one said they drink Skeeter pea. I don't want to touch that one, but they said it was made from Muscadine grapes.
I don't know.
I don't want to be totally on the other side, but maybe Kelsey will say this too. I think that we do tend to start with sweet wines and then we move to dry. And then ultimately, when you become a real connoisseur of wines, then you go back to liking some swimmy, semi-sweets as well
totally
as dry.
You drink the rainbow. Yeah, I like that.
Because if it's a quality, if it's a quality sweet wine. The other day, we had Gewürztraminer, a semi-sweet with salsa. And we needed that slight sweetness to go with that pepper, salsa, and chips. And I couldn't hardly get Cliff and my mom, she's 94, away from the bowl of chips and Gewürztraminer. And they just thought, they really like that. So there's certain foods that really lend themselves to that. And when I took the food and wine course, I learned that. So Texas is actually, I think, even moving into the realm of having some quality sweet wines.
Well, 555 actually has
semi-sweet or sweet. Sorry.
Yeah, so 555 actually has a vignette that's a little bit on the sweet side. Love it, and it makes me every time I want it or drink it, I want a level 5 chicken pad thai. Buy that pad thai by itself, that's too hot. Can't do it. It burns everything I've got. But when you drink with that vignette, absolutely gorgeous. And then you sit there and I can drink that whole bottle. And the next thing I'm like, crap, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm excited to enter into that appreciation for spicy food and sweet wines that are quality.
Yeah. But I think the main thing about sweet wine, I think early Texas sweet wines were just sweet, syrupy sweet. And I think a good sweet wine has the right balance of sweetness and acidity so that it gives you a great mouthfeel, a clean finish. It's not like drinking syrup or Kool-Aid or anything else.
With the right grape varieties.
And with the right grape varieties.
Made with purpose as opposed to for the mouth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Port style wines are sweet, but they're fortified.
It counts itself out.
And, we have a sweet white. I'll call it a white port, but it's a dessert wine. And it was a 2020 wine because we were bored and there wasn't a lot of High Plains fruit and there was nobody at the winery because we were closed. So we said, let's make a white port style wine. And we actually make a cocktail out of it at the winery.
Really?
It's very popular, port tonic.
That sounds awesome.
It's delicious.
Tonic, I like that.
Yeah. I like that. And you brought some for people to sample?
I did not
we're
bring
going
that
there
one.
right after this.
I won't need you to leave right quick and come back. Well, I actually kind of jump way ahead of myself, but that was actually a good conversation. And the one thing I tell a lot of people who have the misconception about Texas wines being sweet, I tell a lot of them also that, they'll see the word dry on it and they think right away it's what's the word they're looking for? That back
Tannic?
feeling, tannic, but they don't know it's tannic. But they say, well, it's sweet. Well, like, no, it's not sweet. That's that faux feeling, that fruit forward taste that you get out there a lot of times. I'm going to talk about Landon for just a quick second. Like Landon's Texan. It's very fruit forward. It's very pronounced fruit forwardness. So a lot of people misconceive sweetness for fruit forwardness. And that's my experience working in the taster room from talking to people and stuff like that. And I will actually explain it to them, fruit forward and jamminess and all of that. Once they understood that and then understand, and then I tell them what dry means on a bottle of wine, they start understanding wine better. And then they have a whole different perspective on wine then at that point, which then that opens a whole new world, a new topic of conversation, because, people don't know what dry is. They think that back finish is a dry finish. And I tell them, no, that's a tannic finish. That is the tannins that come off the grape. And even afterwards, and it's in the bottle, that's in everything they touch, seeds, stems, whatever that's in there. And they start understanding that. Yeah. So it's all about education about what's going on. And a lot of people miss that.
Which brings us full circle to why we're out here, why Texas Wine Growers is on this road show.
That's
a great segue, John. Is to create. I've done this a time or two. It's why people don't like me. I'll keep us on track. I mean, it's why we're here. It's why we're going around the state. It's why all these great people traveled up here to North Texas, because we want people to understand. I love the phrase, and it took me a few years to really fully grasp the concept of this, but I love the phrase that I heard about 5 years ago or 6 years ago called "drink the rainbow." Right? And this is, I'm going to probably offend people, but a lot of people, I'm a girl drink drunk. We go out and I drink pink sparkling rosé.
What?
It's a phrase I learned in college. A girl drink drunk.
I'm going to go ahead and clip that out. And one more, make a little meme out of it and put his picture on it. It's kind of like a little movie.
Girl drink drunk.
Girl drink
I'm a girl drink drunk. One of my fraternity brothers is like,
bubble.
it's fine. It is what it is,
I think that's kind of sexist, actually.
Should I be? I feel like Jesus Christ. I get girl drunk.
Everybody be offended by the fact that I like drinks with umbrellas. Okay, sorry. I think we have other things in the world that are probably more pressing than the fact that I like pink drinks. So, and I didn't coin the phrase, I just use it. So I apologize to everybody out there that just got offended by being real. Excuse me.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. When I did Joe Rogan's podcast, it was totally cool. It was totally fine to do. But otherwise, I like to drink the rainbow, right? Like I hate the fact, to my point, that people always put like demographic drinking, right? I go into a bar and they automatically expect, or I go to a wine, but they're going to expect, like, I'm a 50-year-old white guy. They think I'm going to order like a big, bold Cabernet. No, people need to educate themselves around all the fantastic things that are out there to drink and all the fantastic things that Texas is making, right? So we've come so far full circle around just trying to emulate other regions of the world that in the last 8 to 10 years, we've finally started, in my opinion, to hit our stride and then are becoming okay with making things that 20 years ago, I was told, like, don't do that. Like, nobody's going to drink a sweet. So we didn't. But now, like, we make sweet wines with purpose. We make some rosés with purpose. And so I think having the ability to understand what you're doing and being okay with yourself and who you are and what you do is a cool part of what's happening in the Texas wine industry. I think that there's enough people making really good wines now. 20 years ago when I started, there were like 3 people, right? In my opinion. And I didn't want to emulate anything that was going on because everybody was making goals towards trying to be California or trying to be France or trying to make a super Texan,
right?
Like that wasn't what we are. We're not any of those places. Right. And so my goal from starting out was to grow good grapes and then honor the terroir around that. 20 years later, I'm learning, like, dude, it's really cool. Like, I'm going to make an off-dry Vermentino this year because it's going to lend itself to making a semi-sweet, right, wine because of the structure, because of the acidity, and it's because I also like to drink that, right? And so I think we're at a cool place in our maturation, and a great place to be educating people around the differences of what wine are, and not a singular like demographic mentality to what you're drinking.
Right.
Yeah, the demographic is Texas wine drinkers.
Yeah.
That's the answer to a good semi-sweet or sweet wine is when you have the grape from the beginning and you decide, oh,
Yeah, make it with
this
purpose.
would lend itself to a sweet or a semi-sweet, not at the end when you think, oh, that was a mistake. Let's just add some sugar to it. You know, so a true good semi-sweet. Cliff always says, no, that starts the grape. You know, it starts in the very beginning when you decide to do that with that
That's
grape.
the one thing I tell people that come into the tasting room. They're talking about Texas wines and stuff, and I said, well, our winemakers here, they start with the grape and they let the grape speak for itself. The grape will tell you as a winemaker, what it wants to be. You know, you taste it and you're like, oh, you know what? This needs to be a semi-sweet. Oh, you know what? This needs to be a sweet. Oh, you know what? This would be a really good dry blend or whatever, you know, but the grape speaks for itself.
Also, though, the land. So if you're just picking based on grape variety and you haven't grown the grape in whatever vineyard you're sourcing from, you don't know enough about the terroir expression through the grape. You know, Vermentino from a certain vineyard in Texas may lend itself really well to off-dry wines, but from elsewhere, you may get a really opulent style that is more deserving of a dry style. And so farming the land for as long as many people in this group have and is a huge part of that decision.
I know for us, you know, even the High Plains fruit, Karen goes up and she's tasting the fruit. It's not, is it the right bricks? Has it developed the flavor profile that we're looking for? And the grower may say it's ready, and we come up and she tastes and says, no, it's not ready. It hasn't developed the flavor we're looking for. I'll see you next week. And that's a 5.5 hour drive from Burnett up there to go taste, you know, a handful of grapes and say, see you next week.
Right.
But that's what's important to get the style that you're trying to get, that each is trying to get from their own winery.
And that the grapes deserve.
And I think that's why people like buying grapes from Bingham Family Vineyards is because Cliff is the one that's consistently walking those vineyards and tasting the grapes. And when somebody says, I'm ready to harvest, you know, he'll say, you might want to hold off on that one. Or he'll, you know, with Viognier, you know, he'll tell the buyer, look, if you want quality, you better get it today or tomorrow because it's going to shoot up, you know, really quick, you know. So he's got that really good advice. But, you know, we go by taste and, you know, the seed and the whole.
And I would say, just to kind of wrap a bow on the misconception question, which is where we started. I think the big thing that I would encourage, like anyone that goes out to taste wine from anywhere, if it's Texas, if it's California, if you have the opportunity to go overseas and taste wine, is be open-minded and let yourself truly experience what the vintner and the wine growers were trying to do with every bottle of wine. Every wine has a story. The vintage, what happened in the cellar, like all wines have a really unique story, and they are only created that one time a year in that one place in one way. And if you have an open mind about what you're tasting, I think you kill a lot of the myths that you go in with these preconceived thoughts of like, this should taste this way, or I should taste this wine and compare it. We as humans try to ultimately start comparing things once you start tasting wine, but really every wine has its own purpose, its own identity, and should be kind of viewed and tasted in that manner for the best experience, I think.
Well, you know, you actually
that was a great bow, but if we could just straighten it just so that I could just but see, that's why authenticity is so important, is to know where were those grapes grown and who made the wine. Instead of just picking up a bottle because it has a fancy label on it. It helps to learn that story that you're talking about.
Well, if wine doesn't have a story, you need to question whether you should be drinking it.
I think it's always good if you're going in someplace to say, who's your winemaker? Because if you don't have a winemaker, you can't be a winery. Right? Who's the winemaker?
You know, you actually bring up a really good point about drinking wine, period. And not just in Texas, but globally. Let's just do it like that. You know, people come in and they will say, well, I love drinking wine over here in Oregon. Texas wine doesn't taste like Oregon wine. Or they'll say Washington or Newark, whatever, wherever you want to call it from. And I'm like, well, you know what? You have to leave that perception of taste that you have for whatever region of wine you've been drinking from. Leave it at the door. Come in with an open mind and try what you have here in Texas. I've had some friends come in from California that when they first moved here, this is before I started drinking wine years ago, came over here and said the Mexican food here doesn't taste like California food. You know, like, well,
Thank goodness.
It's well, I said, well, because it's Tex-Mex, it's not California Mex. You know, it's a different ballpark. So you're looking at different elevations, you're looking at different weathers, you're looking at different things. Your taste bud changes from California to Texas, and you have to understand that. So and it's the same thing with wine. And I actually had, and I don't know if none of y'all experienced this, but I actually had a weird experience the other day. I took some Texas wine high in the mountain, and it was my favorite bottle of wine. I'm not going to say the vineyard or the winery because we're not partial here, but it tasted different. It was like super, super bitter. And I'm like, why is it bitter? Well, come to find out, because I was up in the elevation, my taste buds opened up a lot more, because when you're in higher elevations, you swell up just a little bit. And I did some research and found out when you're in higher elevations, your taste buds open up more. And I found a way to combat that. Take some ice and put it on your taste buds a little bit to swell them back down, and then drink it again. And it actually tasted all better. I did not realize being in higher elevations or even lower elevations can actually change the way the wine tastes.
Or with food could have been an option as well.
Yeah.
You're going to taste more.
That's why Bloody Marys taste so good in
also says
airplane.
music, the kind of music that's playing tastes of wine. Well, and the color of the lights in the room. There's a lot of research out there about.
Well, wine is experiential, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody here has experienced like drinking wine in an evening and the sunset's going down, and you go and you buy a few more bottles of that wine. You go home, and then a month later you're let's make dinner, and you crack that bottle of wine open, and you're like, what the hell did I buy? Like, this is shit. Like, why did I buy this? And it's like, because I was on that ridge and the people I was with, and it was fantastic. And so I think something that's been lost in wine in the modern era, and it goes to what Sides is saying, is we've lost that majestic understanding of what this is. This isn't just a beverage, right? Yeah. This is literally, this was a worldwide currency at one point in time. I mean, some of the grapes we grow here, you could actually pay your taxes and your tithings to the Catholic Church 500 years ago. We've lost the understanding of what it means to embrace the path and journey around growing something, then magically taking it and turning it into a product that then can alter your sensibilities, right? And we've lost that. We've lost the majestic nature of that. When in Texas Wine Growers, we talk about since a place tour, and now with Kelsey's help, we're starting to talk about regionality, and I think regionality really matters. You talked about Californians. I find a funny thing. We actually in Kerrville, we've had a lot of expats move into from California, right? And I've had you know what? It's okay. Like, I mean, people are great. Like, I've made wines on the West Coast for a long time, and I learned a lot. And at the same time, I was making Texas wines. But those Californians that come in, they do something very uniquely different than what my Texas customers do. We have wealthy people that come in that are from Texas. They moved from Houston. They were in the oil business. No, sorry, Blake. They drive in and they automatically have this what's the closest thing to Camus that you have? And I was like, well, I don't have shit like Camus because we make wine without mega purple in it.
Right.
And so, but what the people from California do, they come in and what's the fact, dude? I can't facts. This is why people don't like me, because I use facts.
Oh,
right?
You know what? Fact it all up. I'm okay with that.
And so we've tested some, but anyway, but these California folks come in and they understand wine, and they understand the majestic nature around wine because they came from a wine loving region. Right. And so they come in and they taste our wines without these preconceived BS marketing, notions around class and style. Right. So, and they're blown away, and immediately, wine club member, where should I go next?
Yeah.
Oh, well, check out Lost Draw, check out Wim Chris, check out Torn Locks, check out Lewis Wines. Like, if you want wines that are coming from a place, right? You go check these places out, right? And they're automatically always so much more open to what we're doing than the people who are either from here and are looking to, impress somebody. It's been a weird thing that I've come across in my career. After 20 years,
I've seen the same thing.
Yeah,
after 20 years, it took me a little while to figure out what was going on, but I was like, oh, okay, I get it. These people, they just come from a wine drinking community. And you're starting to see that around, like, I think it's cool. Fredericksburg, you're starting to see a wine drinking community that understands, because there's enough of a concentrated industry happening there that people are realistically starting to understand. Right. You still have a lot of people that don't, and there's still a lot of, consumers consumers that are coming. But I think it's an interesting thing that happens. And I think that's why we need to continue to push this education around the mastery of region and the mastery of like growing and authenticity, because we've got to fix the Texas notion, right? We've got to fix in our own backyard that whole mentality and ideal. And I think everybody here has been doing a great job at that. You know, it's been a long road, but I think we're doing a really good job of starting to educate again, which is why we're here.
All of us talk about experience all the time. We're not just talking. It's not enough just to make a really tasty wine, because if you're giving that tasty wine to people who would enjoy it in your presence, and then they leave your presence and they don't understand how to enjoy wine with friends, family, food, and like the remembrance of being in the tasting room with you, you're not going to build that understanding of wine as an experience at all times, even outside of our presence, our tasting rooms.
I think that's a really important aspect of a winery, because it is the only industry I know of that your customer wants to know the story. How did this winery come to be? That's intrinsic. Not only in the winery, but it's intrinsic in the wine. It's part of the experience.
Well, I know a podcast that does that.
Should be.
I know a podcast that does that, right?
Is it one? That's all we keep talking about is how everybody doesn't like me. So
so I want to drop a little saying that I have for myself, and I'm actually working on what's copywriting it for myself. El vino es vivo. The wine is alive.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything you're talking about right here, this is what wine does. It brings people together. I joke about this on my show all the time, where, people go into a bar and you get a beer or you get vodka or something like that. And you start talking really, really loud. And next thing you know, there's arguments and disagreements and yada, yada, yada. Sometimes fists get thrown and stuff like that. But when you go into a tasting room or a winery, or even sitting outside with drinking a glass of wine, you don't have that experience. You're sitting here, like we're sitting right here, we're drinking our wine. Okay. We're having a good conversation. We're talking about our day and, work and all of that. And then all of a sudden, someone right behind us may start a conversation about, my car got stolen the other day or got broken into or whatever. And we turn around like, I had that same experience too, man. You talk about having problems, and next thing you know, you're sitting there sharing conversations. And the next thing you know, you find out they're a long lost relative, or they grew up in the same small town you came from. Actually, honestly, I met a couple the other day in the tasting room from Alany, Texas. Do y'all know where Alany, Texas is?
I do.
North of Graham. And my grandparents came from there. I've never met anybody from Alany, Texas in Dallas-Fort Worth. Okay. And I met them in a tasting room. And that's why I say what you're talking about is an experience. El vino es vivo. The wine is alive, because without it, we wouldn't be having this right now, this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it also goes to the ingrained nature around wine in the United States, that it's a more refined product.
Yeah.
I've been in places overseas where I've seen dudes throw hands over like Grenache grapes and how they're grown. So I mean,
it wasn't wine yet. It's still grapes. It wasn't wine yet.
I don't know, Side. You ever see anybody like want to fight over drinking wine? I bet.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, but I agree with what you're saying. It is a nice thing. It brings a sense of community that other things don't bring.
So sure. I'm going to try to get back on track here on this. So one of the questions here says, why does it matter that grapes are grown here in Texas, and what do people often misunderstand about where grapes come from here? Which honestly is a great question, because people will look at me and like, grapes grow in Texas? And I'm like, yeah, you will be surprised that we have every part of the nation in Texas. You can go and get desert. You can go and get moist Mississippi waters. You can get hilly mountainous region, and then you can get flat plain region. What do you want to grow in those regions? And people look at me like it's crazy. And we actually have a big map of Texas. I don't even know what that was. That was a glass of wine, I hope. But we have a big map of the AVAs in Texas in there. And when people talk about this, I actually show them this. And I show them that the high plains grows about 75-80% of the grapes used in Texas. And I show that to them. They're like, that is massive. And I said, it is massive. And what's crazy is if you go over there, it's all like sandy soil. My experience, I'm going to say it like that. It's all sandy soil, because I went to Ready and I was walking in just complete sand. But if you go over to East Texas, you're going to be walking in marshy soil, sandy loam type soil and stuff. But then if you go down the hill country, you're going to be looking at mountainous regions, You get a lot of nice rocky soil, But I tell people, I said, you have to look at it and you have to understand that different grapes grow in different regions. And they don't understand that sometimes.
Look at every classic wine region of the world. Terroir is so tied to wine. Otherwise, wine could be any beverage. Mm-hmm. It would be any beverage. But because terroir is such a concept that's tied to wine anywhere, if you're using the grapes from another region, you're missing the Texas terroir piece. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge part of the story we just talked about. If your wine doesn't have a story, and terroir is a big part of that, it just is less of an authentic product.
Yeah. I tell people that come in, I said, I'm not want to shame other states, but a lot of them break down the wine to the molecular level and they have the same taste from a 2018 cab to a 2022 cab. You get the same taste. And that's what people like when they go to the store. They want to be able to pick up a bottle and know every year that bottle of wine tastes the same.
Yeah.
In Texas, we don't want you to taste that. We want you to taste. We struggled this year because we didn't have any rain. We didn't struggle this year because we had too much rain. Or this year we had a lot of hail. We want you to taste all that. I even cut this joke up. I even say we want you to taste the bug that passed by that grape and farted on it. Dang, y'all didn't laugh at that?
That's terroir.
That's terroir. Yeah, it's an odd one, but it is one.
But I mean, we want you to taste that because you can get the same varietals over and over again every year, and every one of them will taste different. And we don't want to break it down to the molecular level. We want to keep it where it's at.
I think that's a really good example of what's happening, why it's happening on the West Coast, that the California wine market is quite literally going down in a dumpster fire right now. I had a good friend that called me a couple of days ago who's a 45-year veteran of growing grapes all over. Al Wagner is he's won top grape grower multiple times. And he called me and he just wanted to vent, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that whole misunderstanding that was lost around the majesty of what they had. And they turned it into a beverage, right? They turned it into a beverage that had to be homogenized to meet the masses across the world. And they stopped, 20 years ago, they stopped worrying about vintage. They say they do because their marketing people are great, right? So you get the marketing people and then you got the farmers, and then you got the winemakers, and they're all vastly different minded people. But they lost the ability to understand. I shouldn't say all. I want to clump them all together because there's still magical,
a lot of them out there.
Still magical wines that are out there, but they're not the ones you see, and unfortunately they're not the ones that are sold to the masses. And they're the ones that are truly struggling because the industry as a whole is going down in flames on the West Coast. I think that is where we have an opportunity in Texas, and Kelsey and I've had this conversation a lot, to really focus in on terroir and regionality, right? So yeah, we grow grapes and we grow beautiful grapes, and we've got people like the Binghams that have been growing grapes for 20 plus years, right?
Since early 2000s.
Yeah. And so,
2004.
They're one of the first families I met when I got in this business. And so I think it's a really interesting indicator as to where we can have successes and where we can learn from their mistakes. Right. And we need to, as an industry, focus on that regionality and expression. And it's not, I'm a hill country guy. It's not, I'm a high plains guy. It's not, I'm an East Texas guy. Like I'm making wine next week. My first harvest is coming in on July 2nd. We're making sparkling from East Texas.
Wow.
I'm not happy about it, but I'm doing it.
What kind of sparkling are you making?
That's Blanc de Bois. It's it's going to go to, we're going to make the primary, then it's going to go to old Seth Ebonic so I'm not doing all that.
I think this variation terroir over the state is one of the unique things about the Texas wine industry, because if I go to Napa or Sonoma and I can go to any winery, I'm going to get wines from Sonoma. That's where I am. Or I'm going to get wines from Napa. You can come into any of our tasting rooms and you'll have, here's a hill country. Here's a high plains. Right? Here's a Davis Mountain. Here's a Gulf Coast. Here's Texoma. You can experience wines from all over the state at almost any winery in the state of Texas. In fact, we got from 23 a Syrah from Lost Draw, and we're going to bottle that. And part of our tasting program is going to be, here's a hill country Syrah. here's a High Plains.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the education.
And say,
line.
look at the difference. This is the exact same grape, and now taste the difference. And that's going to be part of the marketing and part of the experience for our customers.
And I think just to touch on what you said earlier, that I think one of the misconceptions and probably one of the faults early on for Texas wine producers is I think we were trying so hard as an industry to like be like someone else or make wines like we thought they would be sold. Yeah. And it kind of set us back a bit. But I think now there's like this overarching, like kind of communal marketing ploy to like, we are not trying to be like any other wine region. Yeah. And we even correct people in our tasting room that says, what do you have that's like this? It's like, we don't have anything. We are making Texas wine and we want Texas wine to taste like Texas wine.
I had that experience the other day. A guy said, I want a California Cabernet. I was like, I don't have that. I have a Texas wine. And I don't even have a Texas Cabernet Sauvignon. That's not part of our program. I said, but let me give you this estate blend from our 3 estate wines. It's the press partials. I said, you like big and bold, full bottle? Yeah. I gave him, he goes, this is a great bottle of wine. I said, yeah, that's a bottle of Texas wine.
Yeah.
Right.
It all goes back to that. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It just goes back to that misconception around what wine truly is. Like, it's the end of the day. Like,
I think a lot of people say their favorite wines by grape variety. And I think that sometimes that's a mistake. If you love a Cabernet Sauvignon, that's great. Which kind? From where? There's such a big difference. It's the most
widely planted grape varietal on the planet. And you can get it in Algeria if you want. And it's actually pretty damn good. The Algerian cabs are awesome. Sorry.
If you say you like wines from a particular region, you may have a preference between hill country and high plains. And if you want to get really into it, it may be Llano Uplift versus Pedernales River Basin in the hill country. Yep. And that's, I think, a lot of the work that the people right here are doing.
Well, one of my favorite things to do when people come in the tasting room, first off, I ask them where they're from, because in Grapevine, we have a lot of people that come in for conventions and stuff. And I ask them where they're from. And then they tell me where they're from. And then I'm like, then I introduce them and I tell them what we have here. We offer Texas wines here. And then I turn around and I say, what kind of wines do you typically gravitate to when you drink? And immediately 99% of them will say Merlot, Cab Sauv.
Yeah.
And then what
always
I tell them,
grape variety.
Oh yeah. But what I tell them right after that, I say, well, today you're not drinking either one of those. And then they look at me like I have like 7 heads on my head. And they say, well, why? And I said, well, because you're stuck on that path right there and you never get to experience something else is out there. And they're like, okay, what do you got? I don't even tell them what I'm pouring for them. I'll pour it for them. I'll pour them a little taste. And I show them, swirl it around good, give it a good whiff, and then drink it. And they drink it, and the look on their face, the expression on their face. I need to start carrying, like, actually, I'm fixing to buy me a pair of the Meta glasses so I can start recording this stuff, okay? There's a reason behind my method on this whole thing. And the look on their face is they're shocked. They're like, oh, this is a Texas wine? I was like, yeah, this is a Texas wine. And then I explain to them, and then I show them the map, and I explain the grapes here in Texas, what we're trying to accomplish. And they're shocked. And then I start pouring them more wines, and they're like, go into another tasting room and do the same thing. Don't get the same old thing. We're creatures of habit. You drink Cab all the time. You drink Merlot all the time. Drink something different. Experience life. Experience what's out there.
But if you find one in Texas, try it. Yeah, because Texas.
I actually make a really killer. I made a killer Merlot.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to be the judge of that because I'm not a big Merlot fan. That tannic dryness in the back of my throat. I'll drink several Merlots.
But you have to taste a Texas one.
Well, I have. Yeah. And every one of them I get is so tannic in the back of my throat, and I'm just like.
Oh, that's got nothing to do with Merlot. That's you need to come visit us.
I actually had a when I did the international wine competition the other day, there was a Tempranillo Petit Verdot blend, and it was so dry, like it was so tannic. I was like I had to take a couple of drinks of water just to get my mouth just kind of moist again. It was so dry, but I liked it. I don't know why. It was creepy, weird.
Because tannins are the backbone of every great wine, man. Every great red wine. That's the goal. Texas does grow grapes. Texas is known for growing different grapes. Texas is known for pushing the envelope. I mean, one of the reasons why we're in OIV is because we've been leading the way on hot climate varietal selection for a long time. One of the reasons why we're getting looks that we are is because we push the envelope. And I say I'm going to take this one. I pushed the envelope. I'll never forget in 2007 being at a conference for one of the other wine associations at the time that meant something. And a gentleman asked me, what are you guys planting? And I said, well, we're planting Tannat. We're planting a varietal called Pic Poul Blanc. We're planting a varietal called Charbono. We're going to plant some Grenache. But I'm going to do some things like Tempranillo and some other things. And he, I'll never forget, he looks at me and he's like, well, when all that fails, you give me a call and I'll buy your winery equipment. that dude hadn't been around for a long time. And so I think pushing that envelope early to understand, I think myself, people like Sides and their family and Blake, there's been a lot of folks that have pushed that envelope around varietal. The Nara family, I got Nikki introduced Teraldigo into the state, and I think that's a fantastic varietal. And I think that alone should be highlighted, that we are pushing the envelope around that. That being said, I personally feel like after that amount of time of growing grapes, I would never plant Tannat in the High Plains again. Would never do it. I would never plant Tannat in the High Plains.
It's on Cliff's question mark.
I would never. It doesn't. For me, I've done so.
John
I
has some
mean,
opinions
I've dissected so many buds after cold winters and seen dead bud after dead bud after dead bud.
I just said dissected dead bugs. I'm like,
no, dead buds. It's you're checking for viability in the bud section. But like Tannat, in my opinion, it doesn't handle it. But in the hill country, it grows like a weed, right? And lots of places in the microclimates around.
Because we're just all so different.
Yeah, but Teraldigo you guys have is beautiful.
Yes,
yeah.
The Teraldigo
so like I would plant
but Tempranillo, I don't even know if we'll plant anymore. Cliff says it's just not cold hardy enough for the winters.
Yeah, well, I mean, Neil Newsom's pulled out most of his Tempranillo at this point. So these are the things that like people talk about, like on the front of the house side. They're like, oh, Texas is all about Tempranillo. And then you'd sit down and talk to 3 growers that have been growing it for 20 years. And they're like, I wouldn't plant that shit if you paid me.
Yeah, that's like saying France is all about Cabernet Sauvignon. But what part of France?
Right.
When you look at how big France is and how big Texas are, they have a lot of similarities. Growing the same grapes across the entirety of the state just because we can. With the perspective of classic wine regions, it's just not going to make sense long term. And
it doesn't.
Well, I think it's already transitioning away from that.
For sure.
I mean, everybody's homing in. But the other thing I like about Texas wines is we're still experimenting.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we're always bringing.
Definitely.
For sure.
We had the opportunity to pick up some Primitivo last year. And it's like, let's take a couple of tons. Let's make something and see how it does, right? And Touriga is going to be this year. We got some Touriga coming in and just say, let's just see what happens.
What was that one that Sandy Rhodes had that they're growing? That they're only one. What's that?
Marcelon.
No, there's another. It started with a P. It's they actually won double gold last year at the Lone Star International.
Percudo?
Yeah, Percudo.
Yeah.
Never heard that before. And actually, when they actually brought out the test sheet, it had all the Pinot Noirs, and it was sitting right there. And I was like, I've never heard of this before. And I looked at it, and I'm like, I'm very intrigued by this. And I even tasted it, and I'm like, holy hell, I actually drank the whole glass. And I got to looking it up. And from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, he's the only vineyard in the U.S. growing that.
He is, yeah. And then the Marcelon, I think he's the only, maybe one other person. My personal favorite wine right now is their Marcelon.
Yeah.
It's my favorite red wine I'm drinking. Like I love what Reagan and Brian are doing.
So that's the point right there. We all get right here is that it doesn't matter where the grape came from. We give it a what's the famous saying here in Texas? Hold my beer.
Yeah.
Can we just say hold my wine now?
Yeah. I mean,
well, some we don't even try because we know, there's 3 things that grapes that, Cliff says that we always look for is early bud break in the spring because they're susceptible to freeze. Then cold hardiness in the winter, even when it's become dormant. And we on the high plains, we have to really watch for that because it gets really cold in the fall. So that's 2 kinds of cold weather that we have to watch for. And then there's heat. You have to watch for the heat. And so there's some varieties he'll look at and he'll say, nah, I'm not even going to try it because it's going to be too much like, something else he has. But yeah, we have, I don't know, we have 20, we have over 25 varieties of grapes that we grow. So we're still learning.
Well, a lot of people also, when they talk about Texas grapes, they're like, oh, you can grow grape here in Texas? It's so hot. Like, well, do you know grapes love the heat? The more they stress out, the better they taste. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, because they're holding the nutrients in, they're getting plumper. They're like, oh crap, I don't know if I'm gonna get any more water. I gotta hold these nutrients in. I gotta be able to feed myself. And the more it plumps up, the better.
I always tell people that there's a bit of psychology in growing grapes. You want to, you want the at bud break. You want the plant to think I'm king of the world, and there's plenty of water, and it grows, and it makes the canopy. It's very vigorous, and then you let it dry out, and you think, holy crap, I may die. I'm going to put my energies into the fruit because I want a bird to come by, and it's about propagating the species and survival. And then you harvest, and then you put the water back on and say, oh, I'm going to be fine. Let's build up some sugars and we'll do it again next year. So,
yeah. And even with the heat in the high plains, maybe we just have it easier. I don't know if you guys do, but because of our very high elevation in the high plains, we tend to have the summer nights of everything cools down in the evening and then heats up really hot during the day. But then we have the cool evenings to let the vines refresh again.
Labor Day weekend last year, I got up. Anthony said, "Hey, come get some grapes out here at Ready." I'm like, "Okay." So I get up at 2 in the morning here in Fort Worth, 90 degrees. Drive out there to West Texas. I got out there to Brownfield, and it was 65 degrees. And I said, "What is this nonsense going on here?" And then by 1 o'clock, when I got through doing my harvest and came back home, it was 75 degrees there. And I got back here at the house, it was still 90 degrees. It's crazy how when you go from one part of Texas to another part, you're actually seeing a complete different climate change.
Of course.
So some nice
full circle now. Back to our
the variation in elevation. We haven't even talked about the variety of soils. I mean, that's drainage patterns. And there's so much more. You want to talk about all of the 1,300 soil types?
Well, I mean, we're not going to talk. I don't know what time it is. So
tell them even in West Texas, even the high plains, there's differences because you see sand. That's all you see. But the depth of where they're planted is different.
I teach a 1-day Texas certification course, and it is far from enough time. Eventually, we need to get to the point where we have a Texas High Plain certification course and a Texas Hill Country certification course, and we start to bifurcate Texas to really get into the various soil types. And I see Erica back there like, it's going to be needed. We're just at the very beginning where we're trying to generalize Texas wine by saying, oh yeah, there's a variety of elevations and certain grapes go better in certain places, but down to the why that works. And then great examples from producers who have been doing the work and have been making those choices is something that we haven't been able to get fully into yet.
Well, it's kind of funny you bring that up. So y'all are very familiar with Kiefer Salt Winery, right? Yeah. Y'all do know they are on actual salt dome. And the weather pattern they have there is completely different from everywhere else there in East Texas. It's crazy because you can see and watch this big hailstorm come through there and just kind of like it parts the water and goes around them and it misses them all the time. But they still get the bad weather, but it's not as harsh as they would get everywhere else. And it is crazy how the terroir makes so much big of a difference, especially when you're on like a plateau like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The hill country has so many rivers that have passed through it and carved out those hills. And then there was so much sedimentary rock that's layered up. All of us are planting in different types and ages of limestones alone. And that's not even considering topsoils that have been deposited from rivers that passed through. And even in the Pedernales River Basin, John and I were talking about what we plant on in high Texas is totally different than the black soil somewhere in the Pedernales River Basin that John was talking about.
Right across the highway.
Yeah.
Really?
You go to, you look at where the granitic soils stop on the north side of the Pedernales River, where you hit a limestone break another 100 miles below or 50 miles below that. On the other side of the river, it's jet black gumbo soils right on the south side. So you can have wines on the south side of the Pedernales and wines on the north side of Pedernales that taste completely different. And again, we could get super nerdy about all of that. We could get super nerdy about this and be here for 3 days. And I would love you teaching a regionality class.
I think
just so you know, I've been behind that for. I would be all over that if you started to do it. But I think we another key point I think is important to make is that we've also made massive advancements in viticulture science and understanding.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Massive. When I first got started, I wanted to put a fan in our vineyard in the hill country. And I was told I'm going to throw AgriLife under the bus. I was told by all the AgriLife agents and all of those scientists in our state that a fan wouldn't work. 4 months later, his uncle throws a fan up at Lost Draw and saves Vermentino in a circle pattern, and that was way back early days. So Andy was one of the innovators, and then Chris and Bill put one, at the William Chris property shortly after that. And that to me was the first place where I saw Texas break from the old antiquated understanding around science is going to dictate what we're doing in the farms. Yep. And when farmers went, no, we're going to educate ourselves and we're going to do the things that are right. Right. And so hail netting. Hail netting's great. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's great for every location. Right. You got to pay attention to what you're doing. You got to understand, if you're going to use hail netting, what the responsibilities around the labor side of that and the problems you can have after you use hail net. Just putting hail netting up doesn't fix. Right. If you don't spray it and then you get black rot worse than you've ever had, you'll lose a crop faster. So I think the advancements in viticulture understanding has brought light years of quality advancements in Texas wine. Right. Lignification. Early on, we had issues in the hill country where we were not being fruitful the next year. The first 3 years, we were like, why are we not fruitful? Why are we not fruitful? Well, a buddy of mine from the West Coast came out, and I was taking advice from my AgriLife agents and consultants in the area that were professionals, and I was watering well into October, right? Mm-hmm. Well, my buddy was like, you harvested in August. Why are you still watering on a regular vegetative cycle schedule? And I was like, well, I don't know. He's like, you're going to have a freeze next week. All this green material is going to freeze. And that's why your bud sensitivity, you're killing your buds before next season. And you're most likely every year hanging secondaries. Well, shit, that light bulb came on. And every place that I've consulted for ever since, it's not about making a vineyard look pretty in the fall. It's about farming, right? So you're farming to go to sleep. Yeah, you want the vineyard to go to sleep. And it took a lot of us.
We celebrate when it goes down. We're like,
exactly. Yeah. Shut off the water. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to go dormant. They're going to be okay. Give them a good drink after harvest. But that's one of those are those little things that became, they were complete mysteries only a short 15 years ago. And now they're common, right? And I think we're continuously learning every year. There's a new science around what we're doing, and it's learning where we farm. It goes back to understanding terroir, understanding regionality,
and wine is generational.
Wine is generational. Yeah,
like we aren't going to know everything in the next year, and every vintage is different, and every weather pattern is different. And we learn every year.
I mean, it's a thing, a winemaker has at best 30 vintages in them. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's crazy to think about that. You only get it one time a year to do it.
That's why old world wines are old world wines, because they've got generations of knowledge that every winemaker has passed to the next generation, and they build on that knowledge.
That's one of the reasons why we started the incubator. That's why we always take
people up to speed faster.
Get people in there that are new. That was one of the reasons why my mentor, Greg Stokes, out on the West Coast, I would make my Texas wines. I'd get my wines stable. I'd leave them for the cellar crew to get to barrel, and I'd go to California and I would do a whole nother crush. Wow. Because it's like being a doctor. You're only as good as the amount of times you get to set that bone in somebody's arm. Yeah. And so I wanted to experience it every single opportunity I could for 10 years. I killed myself. It's probably why I got divorced, but I mean, I'm really good at what I do. So there's a trade-off. But I think that's one of those things, right? It's learning that majesty and understanding it.
The one thing you keep saying here, all of y'all keep saying the exact same thing. If you keep learning, you're living.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But if you stop learning, you stop living. And that translates not only from yourself, personal life, but it goes into what you're doing in the vineyard, and it goes into what you're doing into the tasting, into the production room, and then it goes into the tasting room, because you keep building on top of that. And then that actually brings up to a good topic. Let's talk about one thing: technology helping in the vineyards. Technology. Being an IT guy myself, I've watched in the last 3 years technology like leaps and bounds on how to help make the vineyard much better place to save your grapes, to actually get them better for the next year. How do y'all feel about that?
I think that's a great topic, but I'm going to change your. Sorry.
Okay.
I want to.
It's great.
I'm going to change your gears, because technology is great, and we're a long way from $100,000 robots in our vineyard. But what I would like to talk about is what doesn't make Texas wine. So a bottle shop that brings in wine by the truckload from South Africa doesn't make a winery, right? And so the fact that these wineries operate as these bottle shops operate as wineries, I think that does a disservice to what we are and how it relates to an understanding. And I think that places like Old Vine, Texas is a great example of what an operation should be, because they're supporting Texas. They're supporting Texas farmers. They're supporting Texas winemakers. But when we have these other operations that continuously hide under the guise, quote unquote, guise of a winery and have the same opportunity to ship, to have wine clubs, to operate the same way we do, but don't have anywhere near the investment and the bottom line, right? So I don't mind competing with Sides and Blake and the Binghams. I have no problem.
What about Betty?
Well,
That's fine. Yeah.
I have to give her a hard time.
I don't mind. They're just close. I got short arms.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't mind.
Because we're growing our own grapes.
Of course.
We're sourcing them.
We're the same.
Texas
We're
growers,
apples to apples.
And then we're making
respecting
wine.
each other.
Yes.
We respect each other's craft. But when Blake puts a couple $1 million in a year, I put a couple $1 million in a year, he puts a couple $1 million in a year, and then we have a guy or a girl down the road that can buy cases of wine shipped in at $35 a case and has no infrastructural like operation costs that we have, it's not a fair thing. And I hate the term fair because I like
it's not supporting
Texas agriculture.
Yeah, what we don't need is more wineries that don't grow their grapes, don't make their wine, that are just buying bulk wine. We don't need more of those. We need more stores like Old Vine, Texas.
Amen.
Tasting room, so you can actually go in and taste wines from various different there are state wines and at least wines that you know where the grapes were grown and where was the wine made.
And from
as an
people who
industry,
have gone through sourcing the product and learning about it as well.
Yes.
That is a
we as
huge
an industry
piece.
are competing against the rest of the world, like
in Texas for sure.
Yes.
And we as an industry, if we don't have a unified message around education and why our wines are different and why they are special because of where they are grown, then we're losing
You make up the time.
shelf space and sales across the whole world.
Yeah.
113.
Okay. We got plenty of time. We'll run this thing into right until we get to, like, these people can wait. This is a good conversation.
Well,
I think the point is that
That's a good conversation.
Yeah, well, we got through pretty.
But I think this is the stuff. I mean, I'm gonna, as the president of this organization, I'm gonna pull it back around to what's important, right?
Yeah.
So everybody here wants to sell wine, right? Everybody here needs to sell wine. Everybody here slaves. And you said there was no crying in wine? Bullshit. Everybody cries. Trust me. Everybody here just...
Your wine's made with tears.
There's crying and what the hell are we doing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Lots of this.
to continuously not support authenticity is a travesty, in my opinion, right? Like, there's other organizations that they support industry, but they don't support authenticity, right? And that industry will eventually die.
Yes.
If they do not support authenticity. The wine industry will fall apart, and it may take 50 years.
I think it's more based on that. It's supporting the growers.
Yes. Well, that's what I was
None
about
of
to
us
say.
exist without the growers.
Of course, yes.
Which I'm going to segue that right into the farm bill, John. The farm winery.
Fantastic.
Well, let me just make one thing real short, then you can talk for a long time on that. But I'll say that's definite. In the High Plains, there's a small group called the Artisan Growers Group, and it's a group of small vineyards in Texas. And what our next tailgate topic is the sustainability of grape growing in Texas. Is there any sustainability? I have just talked to too many growers who can't sell their vineyard. They can't they can't sell their grapes. They can't. So I think the growers in the High Plains there's just too many grapes in Texas.
Well,
There's not enough wineries using Texas fruit.
There's not too many growers. There's not enough people utilizing the
We're
fruit.
making a new website for our group that's going to list all these grapes for sale, and I don't see that they're going to get sold this year.
I think what people are missing maybe is that the terroir of Texas is irreplicable. Like the value of making 100% Texas wine is that you cannot make that style of wine in the same way anywhere else. The combination of like complex terroir pieces, the climate, like we're growing in a really unique climate, and across all the spots of Texas that we've talked about and more. The soil types, the age of the soils, the like ancient granite, ancient coral reef, and the elevation. I mean, high elevation growing, yes, Argentina is known for it, but Texas will be as well. I mean, we know it. Those combinations aren't found elsewhere. And so if we don't make 100% Texas wine and have that be believed in and be shared and picked up, it will, the terroir of Texas will go extinct.
I think that's why, one of the things when I was president of Texas Wine Growers, we revamped the website to make it more educational and talked a lot about there's actually a section in there. So if you're listening and you don't know how to read a wine label, there's a section that tells you how to read a wine label.
Yeah, great.
And I think I probably speak for everybody, but definitely for us, we vineyard designate every single thing that we can vineyard designate. I want you to know not only did it come from the High Plains, it came from Farmhouse or it came from La Padera.
And that's what I like. I want people to see when, hey, you grab a bottle of Texas wine, where do those grapes come from? Do they come from XYZ vineyard? I want them to know this because in that way, they're like, oh, I wonder if they have a tasting room themselves, because a lot of times they do. In fact, Reddy just opened up their very first tasting room. I'm actually kind of happy about that,
But they've been selling wine.
They're second or third.
Yeah.
But I mean, even first in that area.
But it's great that people need to be recognized for their hard work. And absolutely, I know for me personally, just if I was growing grapes and my name was on somebody's bottle, I'm like, I'm proud of that.
I will honestly say we didn't put it on the first vintage because what if they don't like it? So
the test comes out.
Let them taste. They're like, heck yeah, you can put that on there. So
many of us proudly work with growers and don't grow every single one of our grapes and put the vineyards and the names proudly on the label. And that's a beautiful part of Texas that's a pretty unique thing.
It's a pretty unique thing in the wine industry, no matter where you are in the world, that you grow 100% of your grapes. It is. It's a pretty rare, having some worldly view and working in other places and working in South America. It really is pretty rare that you grow 100% of your own grapes. That's why I think some folks like
Vineyards is 100% estate.
Well, look at that shameless plug there.
The largest selection. If you want the largest selection in Texas, 100% estate.
So I was actually going to make a make a comment about a lecture I did many years ago, and Cliff came up to me afterwards because I used Bingham Vineyard as an example. I said, when the High Plains figures out, like the Binghams have, that making wine holds the keys to the kingdom and they're going to drive the car, there's going to be a lot of other people that follow suit. And Cliff came over afterwards like, you really think that, like, and I was like, yeah, you literally, you're manifesting your own destiny. You control all of your supply chain. You're a super rare thing, not just in Texas, around the world. It's a very rare thing around the world that everybody does 100% of the supply chain in wine. So going back to the farm winery permit.
Can I have just real quick? But Bingham has grapes for sale this year. So if any wineries out there need some grapes, we have grapes
after
to
this
sell.
podcast, there's going to be so many people going to buy Texas wine. They're going to
line up the door.
So for you guys up here in North Texas, a fun fact, right? We currently have 831 permits, G permits in the state of Texas. That is the fact number that I just got from TABC. That is a fact, right? There are 831 G permit wineries. Myself, because I'm a huge nerd, I sat down and I went through that entire list and I highlighted for a congressman the ones that I knew made wines, and then I've highlighted the ones that I knew made 100% Texas wines. And the statistics haven't changed in a very long time.
Okay.
30 wineries make 92% of all the Texas wine grown.
Wow.
Wrap your head around that. Right. And it's real easy math. You can do it real fast, right? I mean, William Chris Wine Company, 1,200 tons. You got, Reddy, Heath, you got Becker, you've got Yano. Those 5 places alone make up about 7,500 of the 11,000 grapes that are grown in the state of Texas.
Wow.
Right. So it's real easy math. Like I got a call the other day and somebody's like, that's just not true. And I was like, well, here's the math, dude. Yeah. It's a real simple math equation. So if we went out and we got, 500 other wineries to buy 5 tons of Texas fruit. Everybody that grows grapes here would be clamoring to grow more grapes because we would be at a deficit.
Right.
It's just simple math, right? So if you took all of those other wineries and we had a way for them to access more fruit, right? Because that's always the thing is they can't access more fruit. So the goal of the farm winery permit was to incentivize more operations to buy Texas fruit and make more Texas wine. It wasn't a boogeyman theory. It wasn't that we were trying to pull something over on somebody. I know other organizations operate that way, but that's not what we do. We truly want Texas to succeed,
right.
And we truly wanted Texas to be able to support more farmers.
Right.
And so those facts, that simple fact, we could increase our economic power by the wineries that aren't producing Texas wine if they bought 5 tons. So anybody out there up here, we're up in North Texas, anybody out, you need 5 tons, you need 2 tons. You can call me or anybody at this round table and
Except
we'll,
for me.
and we'll, they can probably call you and you'd probably find us. I'll probably figure out how to find us some fruit.
Yes.
So, but to the point, like, let's work to make Texas the super special place it is. And I'll put my politician hat on. It's a good business venture. Like it's a good business stance for Texas, right? Like to sell more fruit. If you sell more fruit, you're going to spend more money on cars. You're going to spend more money on dinner. You're going to spend more money on sending your kids to schools, right? And so it's an important thing to continue to grow what is now the second fastest growing economy industry in the state of Texas. Yes. That is again fact. Yep. Right.
It also keeps money in our local area.
Well, that's what I mean, Betty. Yeah. It supports your local area because you're spending money with insurance people and schools and buying,
and our workers, our employees who work in the vineyard. And
it makes us more sustainable.
When I got my first economic development update from the state of Texas around Texas wine, when I was president the first time of Hill Country Wineries, we were Texasing the numbers and we were just over $10 billion, right? I think it was closer to like 7.5, but we put a little, it's a little bigger when it needs to be bigger, right? Yeah.
A little rounding,
a little rounding error. Yeah. Just, it's all right. Yeah. John's 6 foot. And so this year, right? Wine America, fact, $24.9 billion. Like that is a massive jump in less than 20 years.
Hey, and what percentage of Texans drink Texas wine?
3%.
3%. If more people in Texas would drink Texas wine, this would be a powerhouse industry.
Yeah, that was my misconception is you have someone come into the tasting room and say, I tasted Texas wine 15, 20 years ago. And my first question is, was it really Texas wine? Or was it something else?
Yeah.
And
it was
you just
probably
didn't
a junk
enjoy
bulk.
it.
Yeah, it was probably a junk bulk you got from the West Coast that they were pushing off that they couldn't sell.
Yes.
That's the reality, right? All these people talk about, nobody ever wants to talk about it. Like I was sitting at a table with guys from California and they were like, yeah, man, I just said a bunch of crap, B schedule stuff we couldn't put into any of our blends to a guy in, I won't say what wine, but I knew the guy. They didn't know I knew him, and it was comical, right? Yeah, but he was happy. He paid $6 a gallon for it. This was 10 years ago. And that stuff ended up with a cactus on it and a cowboy with the cactus. And then it said for sale in Texas only on the back. And that does us no benefit. Zero.
Because it's detrimental.
It's detrimental because then you're tasting a bad wine that the perception is that it is Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's, sorry, I get
and
that's bullshit.
People hold on to grudges against.
Yeah, people hold grudges against Texas wine.
Yes.
It isn't even Texas.
Well, then let's talk about that part. We're fixing to get me heated, okay? And you don't want to see me heated, okay?
Oh, do I need size move out of the way? I'm pretty good in my hands.
You keep on scooching back.
But let's talk about these different events in Texas, okay? That say, hey, this is it. Let's go with State Fair, Texas. Okay. Their wine garden last year, 2 years ago, had 2 Texas wines on the Texas Fair, 2 Texas wines. And you call this a Texas wine garden. I call it shenanigans. And I'm going to be nice because it's my show and I can't cuss as much. Now, John, I'll let him cuss all he wants.
Sorry, man. I apologize.
No, John, I want you to cuss. Okay?
I cuss like a sailor. I apologize. It's horrible.
But come on.
It really is.
You're in a State Fair, Texas. You're showing everything about Texas, the state of Texas. And you're going to have California wines in the State Fair wine garden? Come on. Seriously? I'm going to say it, who's the asshat that decided to do that?
Well, who's the distributor that is paying the money to build to build the structure? It all goes back to dollars, marketing, and perception.
And let's talk about the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo also that just recently happened. Man,
Blake.
I'm not gonna lie. When that post came on Facebook, I said all red. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Are you taking money from California and giving it to our youth in Texas for agriculture? That's
about as clear as it could be.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And that is.
Well, they blocked me. They blocked me on the social media. So
for San Antonio Stock Show?
No, the Stockman Wine page. I kept asking I don't know. Are those California horses?
I'm going to be more positive and say, hey, it was done probably with the best of intentions, and both Texas wine growers and Texas Hill Country Wineries very recently submitted a letter to the board of the San Antonio Livestock Show and Rodeo, not being critical, but just letting them know the impact of the Texas wine industry and the hurt feelings, I will say, of Texas wineries from that step. I think they probably didn't realize what they were doing or what that impact was. And the request really is, hey, just sit down and let's have a discussion about, is there a pathway that a Texas winery can make this wine for you in the future? And can we explore that first? And if absolutely the answer is no, we can't do that because nobody can produce either quantity or price point or whatever it is, then fair enough. But at least let's have that discussion.
I'm going to be honest, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong. If San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo come up to you and say, hey, could you donate? We're going to use the word donate, okay? Because we know it's expensive to do this. But this money that we're raising here is sponsorships for scholarships for these future youth ags. Would you have done it?
Well, yeah.
What was the quantity?
It's the quantity.
Yeah.
So I look at Torna Locks. We make 5,000 cases of wine a year. That's what we do.
Right.
I'm not going to one year make 10,000 cases of wine because it requires more capital and that's not our vision. That's not what we designed this winery. We were stupid enough. This is a retirement project for us, right? So,
how's that retirement going?
Yeah, I'm working hard.
We were hoping ours would lead to retirement,
but I recognize that we don't have the capacity to do that. So I wouldn't. But there are wineries out there that do have that capacity do that.
We have aged 22 and 23 wines. I'm not sure if I understand the situation, but we could have made cases and cases of wine.
But even that, you had 4,000 tons of fruit dropped on the ground last year. Yeah. There are growers that would say, hey, I would much rather see the fruit, I'm sure, go to a beneficial cause.
Even if you did it in smaller quantities to them, that makes it a limited release. Only to them, and then they can sell it at a decent price, and that money can still be coming in. Even if it's, let's say, okay, you make them 1,000 cases, and it's different varietals, different styles, different whatever, and they say, okay, we're going to sell this. We're going to sell it for $50 a bottle on here, no matter what it is. It's a limited edition, plain and simple. Right there, people will eat it up, and when it's gone, it's gone. Next year, you make the next one.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to, and I don't think I know. I mean, and to be clear, Blake and I were the ones that wrote the letter to the San Antonio Rodeo, I think we articulated well the disappointment in Texas, but I think we also articulated the ability for, if there was a conversation we could have as an industry or industry leaders, those organizations could have facilitated making the assumption of the 10,000 cases of wine that they needed. I think part of the problem is the perception. It all goes back to this damn perception, is the perception that Texas wine wasn't good enough to be made to be that product, because the people that are in charge of that organization, they're still working from that mindset that, in 1985, Camus and Mayomi were the things that they absolutely loved. And so they're still working in that perception that those are the best quality wines. Yes. And they haven't educated themselves, again, to what we're actually doing, right? And so it just kind of falls into this like really bad cyclical cycle around understanding, which is why we're doing what we're doing, right? Yep. And so I think we'll have the ability to move that forward in the future. I think we made a good point.
I think we just want to have a conversation and let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
Nobody's mad, but you can be disappointed. It's fair enough to be disappointed.
It's hurtful. It's just hurtful. I mean, you don't go into a Texas steakhouse and say, I want a steak, and it comes from China.
Yeah, no, we could get my family's raised beef for a long time. We can get all kinds of crazy stories, but I think it all goes back to I think the line in the sand for me, why I wanted to push and I pushed on the San Antonio Rodeo thing is I think it was time for us to create a line in the sand and a place for us to be able to have conversations and show every organization, not just San Antonio Rodeo, Houston Rodeo, TDA, TABC,
yes.
Every little small county chamber of commerce and economic development group that we're real, we're viable, and the perceptions around everything comes in on a tanker truck is wrong.
Right.
And the perceptions that everything is made with poor quality is very wrong.
Right.
And I think this, to the point of what we did with San Antonio Rodeo, was to create a place where we could start that conversation again, because I think we'll have to have it again. We'll have it with another organization. Mm-hmm. I will say this, after the farm winery permit push this year, TDA, God love them. They've been all over Texas. And they are, we have regular conversations. They're pushing very hard, harder than they have in a very long time. Mm-hmm. And they've worked within mandates that made them do the things they were doing. But now they've opened up because they're seeing the light. I think the state government's also seeing the light around Texas wine because it does matter, right? And you're starting to see people and organizations. That's why we're here, right? We got between industry and consumers. We've got almost 200 tickets sold to this thing it's Tuesday, right?
Yes, it's Tuesday
on a Tuesday afternoon, right? And so I think it all comes back to rebranding the perception around what Texas wine is. And we've got to do all our parts.
And education. The people who are coming in here, do they judge Texas wines regularly? Are we reaching the judges of the San Antonio Rodeo and the Houston Rodeo and Texom and all the competitions that we submit our wines to, and that Texas wines are winning?
We've reached
Texom. We're doing that work now, but we're, part of the way there. But to reach every person who is judging Texas wine, to get them to understand where the quality is and why they're winning awards and why they're being well received. I mean, we're at the beginning of that, frankly.
Yeah. I'll be dead and gone when we figure it out.
Yeah. Same.
Well, John, you're going to live forever. I'm going to make sure you live forever. I'm going to pickle you so you can live forever.
Well, I'm a werewolf. So
werewolves live forever?
They do.
As long as you don't hit him with a silver bullet.
This one does. I don't know.
I really don't want to have to stop this conversation. I really don't. I mean, this is a really good conversation. We can keep on going. We can make this a multi-part. And actually, I want to talk to Kelly about doing something like this. And me and John, you and I have talked about this multiple times, doing something like this.
Yeah, the one we talked about was a little bit more colorful. It was me and Ron and Chris. And
yes.
Yeah,
throw down.
and a bottle of bourbon. I wanted to,
we can still do that.
I would love for you to be on that one.
Hey, you know what?
Yes. That's the one you need. That's the one.
Let's make it happen. I mean, I'm serious.
Right.
I'm how I feel about Texas wine and Texas industry, and not just Texas wine, but Texas anything. I'm born and raised here in Texas. I grew up in Breckenridge, Texas. I've worked on ranches here. I've done hay. I've done cattle. I've done everything, and I push and promote everything I can from Texas because we could self-sustain our own economy here. Not saying we should. I mean, we shouldn't succeed from the union, but I mean, we could self-sustain. What was that look for?
You see that look?
Just listening. That's it.
We don't need to get it. We don't need to get into that because then you'll start getting me talking about why we keep pushing labor away. But
let's not get into that. We don't have much more time. But I mean, you know how I feel. We've talked about this in depth. I want to push and promote this. This is why I bring this podcast in. Is I want people to get to know each and every one of y'all's stories, and then I want to push and promote Texas wines. And I try really hard to stay on top of everything as much as I can. And I learn from all of y'all. I don't just learn and I just stop. I learn from all of y'all and I listen. And then I teach people coming into my tasting room about the wine industry and the Texas wines. And they love it. They eat it up and they want more. And so I offer them when they come into the tasting room Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, not Wednesdays because of half price bottles. But I do a full spectrum tasting, full spectrum tasting. Whites, rosés, reds, and they eat it up. They love it. They want to learn more about it. And I tell them, hey,
could we? Sorry, I had.
Go ahead, hit your thought.
Before you got too far down the road, I mean, because you work at Landon Winery, I'd love to have this conversation with your boss. I mean, if old Bobby wants to get on with me sometime and talk about and debate the difference between Texas and not Texas and selling wine, I would love to have that conversation.
I will definitely try.
He's a nice guy. I like him. We just have a fundamental difference around Texas industry.
Well, and I tried to actually have him on my 100th episode, but he had an unfortunate accident while running.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Well, I don't like that. I wish ill on anybody. I don't want anybody to get hurt.
But with all that being said, I want to appreciate y'all for taking your time out, getting here early for this. It's been an honor to sit here with y'all. Y'all are some of the greats of the Texas wine industry. And you may not think that, but you are. You're pioneers for everything that pushes us forward to get something done. And y'all's names always pops up in somewhere online. And I appreciate everything y'all do to work hard to push and promote the Texas wine industry.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for doing this.
Before we close it out, John or somebody will finish off the last little bit right here. You will learn about this, or you want me to do it myself? Who wants to be the? Oh, you know what? Let's have the educator do all this. The last four paragraphs.
On the spot, Chelsea.
Learn more about. Sorry, I've already ruined it. Learn more about Texas wine on our website. Is that what I'm reading?
Yes.
Okay.
And you don't have to read it word by word. You can read it and just kind of ad-lib it all in.
I got you.
Okay.
Got it?
I've got this. Learn more about Texas wine on our website. There are fantastic resources. And you can become an advocate member of Texas Wine Growers at texaswinegrowers.com. Someone want to take it from here?
We invite all the listeners out there to visit all the fantastic tasting rooms in the Texas Hill Country.
Yes.
Members or non-members.
Come ask questions about wine.
Come ask questions about wine. Look for authenticity.
Yep.
You can follow us on Texas Wine Growers Instagram and Facebook. Yep. We have a great event. I'm going to plug a little South Texas deal. We've got a great event on July 17th. The culinary event in San Antonio is going to be fantastic. I'm really, really looking forward to this one. And then on the 20th to the 21st, if you're a restaurateur, we're going to be at the Restaurant Association show in Houston, and that's going to be a good one. We're going to have a Texas Wine Growers booth there. You can come and taste 100% Texas wines, take them back to your restaurants, and wow your customers.
Nice.
Come visit us.
Visit us.
Yep. Come to the tasting room.
And you know what? So I'm going to put you all four on the spot. And since Betty ran off, I don't know where she ran off to, but do y'all have a wine quote that y'all really like? Like something that you just like, you always say when you're making wine, you're out in the vineyard working and you're all alone and you're like I have El Vino e Vivo.
I mean, I have one that I've trademarked. I'm known for, and I always tell people to drink Texas. I could care less about selling wine to Chicago. To be honest, I want to sell wine to Texans, so I say drink Texas.
Yeah. Ours is come to Tornalox and have a truly Texas wine experience.
Awesome.
We believe in wine as food and with food, as a product of agriculture first, and as an experience.
Awesome.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Man, the bar just kept getting higher and higher.
Yeah. Mine is just drink Texas wine. And I don't have this coined thing, and truly open your mind and be, ready to experience something different than what you've had before.
Awesome.
Now, you want to hear what we say on the crush pad or
go ahead.
How many bleeps you got?
I can't bleep that one.
You got?
I mean, I can bleep that, and then I'll put in subtitles at the very bottom.
You're moving too slow. Smile size.
Hurry up! Something is
Hurry up!
Again.
Hurry up!
Well, so
is that truck still here?
Well, how many tons do we have left?
Yeah.
Oh man,
does that truck really have 20 tons on it?
Well, I tell you what, when y'all get a chance, my first time harvest. Okay, I did it with Chris McIntosh. He's standing right over there in the window there. Okay, my first time doing a harvest, I was excited. Okay, got out there and I'm sitting there. We're getting the clusters off. I'm doing such a good job. I'm proud of myself. I got my little clippers. I'm doing it. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to put my AirPods in and I'm just going to go into my own little world and do this. All right. So I put my AirPods in and I'm sitting there clipping. Oh, well, there's my finger.
Yep.
Got the whole side of my finger. And of course, he said I was going to be the first one to hurt himself. I was actually the only one. And then the next week I went and harvest with Rancho Serrano. They gave me the safety clippers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happens.
Yeah. We always tell our volunteers at Harvest, it's not, is somebody going to cut their finger? It's who's going to cut their finger.
Yep.
Well, so come join Harvest.
Yes. Harvest coming up soon. Harvest. Are y'all excited about Harvest this year? Yes, no?
I mean, look, it's the Super Bowl of what we do. So I'd be lying if I would say that I wasn't excited, but I'm tired, man. I mean, we've had a busy year. We've had a busy couple of years. The industry's been tough. So am I excited that it's starting for me next week? No.
I think I'm always excited when harvest, when it's not looming.
Yeah.
But when it's looming and you have like, man, we got to bottle 4,000 cases of wine before we harvest.
That's where we are.
That's where we're
bottling still to do.
There's so much still to do before we get going and harvest.
Kelly is giving us the cut sign.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah, I saw it. Well, so we're going to go ahead and end this. So this is Will.
And Kelsey.
And Blake.
And John.
And Andrew.
And since...
and Betty.
And I'm Betty. And this is We Know Texas Vino. Cheers.